deep inside the CIA's declassified archives, filed right next to assassination plots, mind control experiments, and invisible ink formulas, sits a heavily redacted folder dedicated entirely to a house cat. Not a metaphor. Not a clever Cold War code name for a human operative. An actual living cat, surgically modified into a multi-million-dollar surveillance device. Its first and only mission lasted somewhere between a few seconds and a few minutes. The most unbelievable Cold War conspiracy theories, the ones sounding like paranoid internet fever dreams, often have a real horrifying government paper trail behind them. Real budget lines, real signatures from high-ranking officials, and memos neatly typed on CIA letterhead describing operations that border on absolute madness. Project Acoustic Kitty sits at the very top of that list. In the 1960s, the Central Intelligence Agency decided that planting hidden microphones in lamps, telephones, and embassy walls simply wasn't enough. The agency wanted a mobile bug, a surveillance platform that could walk right up to a park bench without drawing a single glance of suspicion from trained KGB counterintelligence. A bug with fur, whiskers, and 4 legs. The result was one of the most expensive, bizarre, and quietly tragic experiments in the history of American intelligence. Yes, to grasp the sheer desperation driving the CIA toward such an absurd idea, you have to look closely at the espionage landscape of the early 1960s. Both sides of the Iron Curtain were locked in a quiet, relentless, and high-stakes arms race. But they weren't just racing to build nuclear warheads. They were racing to build miniaturized listening devices. And the Soviets had already thoroughly outsmarted the Americans. The wake-up call for U.S. intelligence had happened years earlier, but its psychological impact still haunted the corridors of Washington. In 1945, a group of Soviet schoolchildren presented the U.S. ambassador in Moscow with a beautifully hand-carved wooden Great Seal of the United States. It was a gesture of goodwill. For 7 years, that seal hung proudly on the wall of the ambassador's private office, silently broadcasting every highly sensitive, classified conversation directly to Soviet intelligence. When American technicians finally cracked it open in 1952, they were stunned. Inside was the thing, a device created by Russian inventor Leon Theremin. It was a passive resonant cavity bug so ingeniously simple, it required no power source, no batteries, and no internal wires. It was completely undetectable by standard American anti-surveillance sweeps. It took American counterintelligence the better part of a decade to even realize they were being listened to. This massive, embarrassing blind spot completely terrified American intelligence. The psychological damage was done. Soviet officials operating in the United States and Europe knew that indoor spaces were hopelessly compromised. As a result, they began holding their most sensitive off-the-record meetings outside, on footpaths, in open plazas, and on park benches. Traditional wired microphones were utterly useless in these outdoor environments. You can't wire a public park without someone noticing. Furthermore, sending a human agent to linger close enough to eavesdrop was a death sentence for the operation. Highly trained Soviet spies would instantly spot a stranger reading a newspaper too close to their bench. The CIA was fighting blind. They desperately needed the ultimate deniable surveillance platform. They needed something invisible inside a secure meeting room at the CIA's Directorate of Science and Technology, surrounded by acoustic engineers and intelligence planners. Someone had a stroke of twisted genius. Think about the urban landscape. Cats wander everywhere. They ignore everyone. They belong nowhere in particular, yet they are ubiquitous in every city on Earth. Nobody interrogates a stray cat. Nobody assumes a feline begging for scraps is secretly transmitting audio to a listening post 3 blocks away. If you could turn a cat into a self-directing microphone, you would completely bypass every counter-espionage protocol the Soviets had ever written. However, turning a biological creature into a piece of tactical hardware is a gruesome endeavor. The grim reality of building this asset started on an operating table. The CIA's internal paperwork, devoid of any ethical hesitation, would later proudly call the upcoming procedure a remarkable scientific achievement. You have to remember that this was the exact same era and the exact same agency that gave the world Project MKUltra, the illegal program where the CIA secretly dosed unwitting American citizens with LSD in a quest for mind control. The institutional appetite for the extreme, the invasive, and the deeply unethical was already well established. They simply pointed that ambition toward an animal. Veterinary surgeons, working under strict CIA direction and bound by total secrecy, performed a highly invasive hour-long procedure on a live female cat. The engineering required to make this work was staggering for 1960s technology. Every component had to be custom-built from scratch, miniaturized to an unprecedented degree. First, the surgeons implanted a tiny, highly sensitive microphone directly into the cat's ear canal. The acoustic engineers hypothesized that they could utilize the feline's inner ear's natural shape as a built-in directional antenna. Second, they buried a small radio transmitter at the base of the animal's skull. Third, they threaded a nearly invisible, flexible wire beneath the animal's skin, running all the way down its spine to connect the microphone to the transmitter. Finally, and most invasively, they surgically placed the power source. A specially designed miniaturized battery was implanted directly into the cat's chest cavity. Former CIA officer Victor Marchetti, who would later become a vocal critic of the agency's excesses, provided a much blunter, unpolished description of the procedure. In his own words, they slit the cat open, put batteries in him, wired him up. The tail was used as an antenna. They made a monstrosity. He was entirely right. The CIA had essentially created a Frankenstein's monster wrapped in fur. They poured millions of dollars into hardware miniaturization alone, long before the cat ever faced a mission. But once the hardware worked in theory, the agency slammed into a biological brick wall that no amount of engineering and no amount of black budget funding could fix. You cannot brief a cat. The CIA's operational plan was delightfully simple on paper. Deploy the cyborg feline near the target. Train it to walk toward the specific individuals conversing. Sit near them and stay put until the conversation concluded. The underlying acoustic theory was actually quite brilliant. A cat's cochlea acts as a natural noise filter. While a mechanical microphone placed in a park would pick up every gust of wind, passing car, and chirping bird, a cat naturally filters out irrelevant background noise, focusing its hearing on human speech. The theory was flawless. The execution was a nightmare. Cats, as any pet owner will tell you, do not care about the Cold War. They do not care about the geopolitical struggle between capitalism and communism. During behavioral conditioning sessions, the CIA trainers attempted to use operant conditioning, rewarding the cat for moving toward specific voices, but the environment was uncontrollable. A rustling leaf, a scurrying mouse, or a nearby bird was infinitely more urgent to the cat than eavesdropping on a simulated Soviet diplomat. Trainers watched in sheer mounting frustration as the multi-million-dollar asset simply got bored and wandered off mid-session to take a nap. The single biggest failure point, however, was hunger. The moment the cat got hungry, all behavioral conditioning evaporated. It completely abandoned the mission profile to search for food. A cat's stomach simply overrides its training. The CIA's solution to this natural biological hurdle highlighted the absolute ethical void of the entire program. Instead of recognizing this as a fundamental, insurmountable limitation and scrapping the project, the agency doubled down. They ordered a second, even more invasive surgical procedure. This time, neurosurgeons intentionally interfered with the animal's neurological hunger signals. They attempted to override its basic biological drive to eat, essentially trying to wire the cat's brain to ignore starvation while on a mission. A living creature's survival instinct was treated as nothing more than an annoying hardware glitch that needed to be patched. For 5 grueling years, the agency burned through millions of taxpayer dollars, stacking surgical procedures on top of behavioral conditioning, determined to force nature to comply with American intelligence goals. By 1967, Project Acoustic Kitty was finally declared ready for a real-world field test. The total price tag for this single animal? An estimated $20 million, according to Marchetti. Adjusted for inflation, that is an almost incomprehensible sum for the era. Well over $150 million in today's money. The target for the field test was chosen with elegant simplicity. A park along Wisconsin Avenue in Washington, D.C. This was a known diplomatic corridor where Soviet officials frequently held exactly the kind of off-the-record outdoor meetings the CIA was so desperate to capture. The objective was straightforward. 2 men were sitting quietly on a park bench. A heavily modified CIA surveillance van pulled up near the park, attempting to blend in with the Washington traffic. Inside the cramped, sweltering back of the van, technicians anxiously monitored their audio receivers and recording equipment. 5 years of classified, morally bankrupt, immensely expensive research came down to this exact moment. The van doors slid open. The heavily modified cat, wired for sound, surgically altered to ignore later writings. He claimed the cat actually survived the test perfectly fine. According to Wallace, the program was quietly retired simply because the animal was completely operationally unreliable. It was impossible to consistently direct the cat toward a specific target, and the audio retrieved was heavily distorted by the animal's own movements and purring. Whether flattened by a cab or quietly benched for sheer feline incompetence, the ultimate outcome was identical. The $20 million Cyborg cat never produced a single second of usable, actionable intelligence. It was a spectacular, monumental failure. A highly classified CIA memorandum dated March 1967 officially closed the project. The document, completely devoid of any irony, is a masterpiece of institutional face-saving. The memo lavishly praised the team's energy and imagination, stating that their work would serve as a model for future scientific pioneers. And then, in the very same breath, it quietly admitted that using live animals for foreign intelligence in real-world environments was simply quoting the memo directly, not practical. The project was unceremoniously shut down. The massive bleeding budget was quietly folded back into the agency's broader secretive Cold War ledgers, hidden from the public eye. For over 3 decades, Project Acoustic Kitty was treated as a wild, unbelievable rumor among retired intelligence officers. A ghost story told at bars to mock the Directorate of Science and Technology. That changed in 2001. Heavily redacted CIA documents relating to the program were finally declassified, forced into the public eye by relentless Freedom of Information Act requests filed by Jeffrey Richelson through the National Security Archive. The American public could finally read the undeniable proof in the government's own sanitized language. This wasn't an isolated fringe experiment run by a rogue, mad scientist in a basement. It was an officially sanctioned, multi-year program run directly through the highest levels of American intelligence. It survived endless internal reviews, repeated surgical failures, and massive behavioral setbacks. In an era of completely unchecked intelligence budgets, there was simply no mechanism in place to force anyone to stop. No one anywhere in that chain of command had either the authority, the courage, or the incentive to simply stand up and say, no. It is crucial to remember the timeline. The Church Committee, the famous Senate investigation that eventually exposed massive CIA abuses like illegal domestic spying and foreign assassination plots, didn't convene until 1975. That was a full 8 years after Acoustic Kitty was quietly shelved. For the entirety of this project's 5-year lifespan, there was no congressional watchdog. There were no investigative journalists asking pointed questions. There was no meaningful oversight whatsoever. Just a highly secretive agency, a blank check signed by the American taxpayer, and an idea that nobody in power was willing to call ridiculous. Seemed when the historical dust settles and the dark comedy of the taxicab fades, we are left with a profoundly uncomfortable question. If the United States government was willing to spend the modern equivalent of $150 million to wire a living house cat using primitive, bulky 1960s technology, what exactly has replaced it? We now live in a terrifying new era of surveillance that makes Acoustic Kitty look like a child's science fair project. We have synthetic drones smaller than a hummingbird, engineered to hover, perch on windowsills, and observe without ever being noticed. We live in a world of biometric tracking so advanced it is capable of identifying a specific individual by their unique gait pattern from half a city block away, simply through a street camera. Most chilling of all, neural interface technology is no longer science fiction. Devices designed to read, record, and even influence signals directly from a living brain are actively being developed by private companies in plain sight, with massive military and intelligence funding quietly backing them up. If a cyborg cat with a battery sewn into its chest represented the cutting-edge state-of-the-art half a century ago, imagine what unchecked ambition, coupled with modern nanotechnology, looks like today. Project Acoustic Kitty is almost always remembered as a punchline, a joke about government waste. But underneath the dark comedy sits a genuinely serious warning. It is a stark reminder of exactly how far a powerful secretive institution will go and exactly how much of the public's money entrusted will quietly burn when it believes no one outside its own walls will ever find out. Somewhere, in a subterranean facility we don't know the name of, funded by a classified black budget we will never see, someone is very likely working on the next Acoustic Kitty. We just won't find out about it for another 40 years, if we ever find out at all. If this deep dive hooked you, this is exactly the kind of history we declassify every single week here on Spycraft Declassified. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next file. Because in the murky world of intelligence agencies and Cold War secrets, the strangest, most unbelievable stories are almost always the true ones.